There are many decisions that will impact your financial success throughout life. Your career choice, the car you drive, how much debt you choose to get in, the city that you live in, the investment choices that you make. But far and away, the most important decision that you will ever make for financial success, the one that has the most impact over everything else, is who you marry. Now, my wife and I are currently celebrating our 9th anniversary, and it has caused me to do a little bit of reflection because as I look around at our culture, at our society, and at many people that I know, it is very apparent to me that if I had married anybody else, then by now I'd be divorced, fat, broke, and miserable, just like the average American. I absolutely would not be where I am today without her. We have a rock solid marriage, better than anybody that I know, would not trade places with anybody, and we've learned a few things along the way. So here are 9 things that my wife and I have learned over the last 9 years that have contributed to our success in money and marriage, and those go hand in hand. The reason why those go hand in hand is because if you get this piece wrong, number 1, money is the number 1 reason for divorce. When divorce happens, you lose half of everything that you have. And even if it never comes to that, you do marriage the wrong way and you fight and clash and build contempt and resentment and bitterness throughout your entire life together, that is not a foundation that will allow you to build the life you want and get where you want to go. If you get the marriage piece right and you marry the right person and you build the proper relationship, that will be the engine that will take you where you want to go. If you build it wrong, you'll sputter out and your relationship will fall to pieces. These 9 tips, tricks, strategies, tactics, these are things that we've learned that have helped us, that we've picked up along the way. So take from it what you like. Hopefully it'll help you out too. Number 1, for those of you who are not married yet, marry for values and character, not accomplishments. There's a huge trend that I see today, especially with young men, that they want to become something and accomplish something big before they'll feel worthy of getting married. So you've got guys who are in their 20s, they're working, they're trying to get progress in their career, they're trying to build wealth, they're trying to get out of debt, they're trying to have all these financial accomplishments before they say, hey, I'm gonna go out and try and get married. The problem with this is that number 1, your progress will actually be slower if you're trying to do everything yourself. Number 2, you're training yourself to be selfish. All those years you spend focusing on yourself, focusing on your own career, building your own self net worth, self-love, self-care, self-discipline. These are all habits that you are training yourself to be selfish. That is the opposite of what it takes to be a person that will be a good partner in a marriage. Similarly, there's a large trend with women that I'm sure you have seen on social media where they are looking for somebody who is already there. Sure, you've seen the videos where women will get confronted and they'll say, okay, what is the minimum height you're looking for, the minimum net worth, or the minimum income, or the maximum weight, or whatever the characteristics are of the man they're looking for. And statistically speaking, a man who is not married, who's at least 6 feet tall, earning at least $100,000 per year, a woman has a 0.37% chance of finding this person. It's far more important to find somebody who has the character and the shared values as you do so that you can go there together and not try and wait until you can find somebody who is already there, because by the time they're there, they're likely already taken. Number 2, play by your strengths. Don't clash over your weaknesses. This is something, especially financially speaking, I see far too often, that you have 2 people who are working together to build a shared life. And one person has these strengths and the other person has these strengths. And instead of allowing those strengths to work together like the cogs in a machine, like the gears in a clock, they clash over those differences and it turns into a fight rather than the division of labor and working together according to your own strengths. My wife specifically is very good at budgeting, at being frugal, and cutting out the unnecessary fat. So this was a very, very helpful, especially early on before we were making any money or when we were trying to get out of debt. And I am a lot more skilled and focused on the long term, the investing and starting to make more money. And so whenever we would go to the grocery store, there was the opportunity for us to clash over that. I wanted to buy the Oreos and I wanted to buy the bag of chips, but we were sticking to whatever was on sale that week. And so I had to release what I wanted and give that up and allow her to take over in her areas of strength. And then she had to be willing to give up and allow me to play by my areas of strength so that we could prepare for the long term by living in the short term according to her strengths. I see far too many couples that have these same strengths, whether it's one person or the other doesn't really matter, but instead of allowing each other to work together on it, they clash and they fight over it. In addition to this, when you work together according to your strengths, it allows you to have that division of labor and make progress much faster. If you're able to share your incomes, share your expenses, treat your entire life, everything you do together as a joint venture, you're going to make more progress faster because you have two people with complementing strengths working towards the same goal instead of two people that are just roommates and just living together trying to achieve their own things. So work together with your complementary skills and don't clash and fight over your weaknesses. Number 3 is the Monopoly test. Can you play a game of Monopoly with this person and actually enjoy it? Now, this test obviously doesn't work if you actually like playing the game of Monopoly, because then you'd probably enjoy playing that game with pretty much anybody. But for most people, the game of Monopoly is actually pretty boring. And so come up with a game that you don't like, whether that's chess or Monopoly or something else. And if you can play that game to completion with that person and you still enjoy your time, you still have a good time, then that probably means that you guys have the capacity to be best friends. My wife and I are absolutely best friends. We talk to each other about everything. We hang out with each other more than we hang out with anybody else, and we enjoy each other's company more than we enjoy anybody's company. In my opinion, this is one of the pillars of the solid foundation of our friendship because we actually like each other. I think that is one of the most important things to look for or to build in a marriage. Because if you don't like each other, it's going to be really hard to work together on those common goals and achieve a common success. It will allow you to be selfless for that other person because you enjoy them, you like them, you can work for their benefit instead of your own, and they can do the same for you. It makes it very easy to consider their needs as if they're more important than your own and elevate their needs above your own. And again, it allows it to be easier for them to do the same for you. Number 4, finish the fight. I think neglecting to finish the fight is one of the things that allows the pain and resentment in a relationship to build up to the point where the relationship breaks. Finishing the fight is like getting an oil change on your car. It seems really meaningless in the moment. It seems like it's not that big of a deal if you neglect it, but eventually the pain of that will build up and it will cause major problems. There's an old proverb that says, "Don't let the sun go down on your anger." A more accurate translation of that would be, don't let the sun go down on your resentment or your bitterness. There will absolutely be times where you are frustrated with each other. You have a fight. You are angry with each other. You're going to have that conflict, that confrontation. And the best thing you can do is don't stop until it's complete. No matter what it takes, find that resolution. Because if you don't, there will be bitterness and there will be resentment left over. And in every relationship, there's something called a pain bucket. And if you add pain into that bucket, it's just a couple drops, doesn't do much. But over time, that bucket will fill up. And once it starts to spill over, you've got decades of pain and bitterness and resentment builds up between you. And it's extremely difficult to go back and deal with all of that. So if you never let the fight go unfinished, you never let that resentment build up, that bitterness built up, you never have to worry about that decades down the road. Everything gets completed now. We're going to find the resolution right now. We're not going to let this just hang over and just forget it and pretend that it goes away, because it doesn't. Finish the fight. Number 5, missed expectations will cause you to doubt what you know you know. So what does that mean? There's a story in the Bible, and if you're not religious, don't worry about it because the point of the story is not religious. There's a guy named John the Baptist, and his job was to tell everybody that Jesus was the Messiah. And this is something that, the Bible says he knew from when he was a baby, and that was his whole life's purpose. And he went around saying, hey, everybody go follow this Jesus guy. There was a certain point where he got put in prison, and when he was in prison, he heard the things that Jesus was doing, and they were things like hanging out with alcoholics and prostitutes, and they were not the things that John expected to hear that Jesus would be doing. He expected that Jesus would be like a military revolutionary leader that would overthrow Rome. And the Bible says at this point, John sent his followers to go ask Jesus and say, hey, are you really the one that we've all been waiting for? So there was this guy who since birth had known that his only purpose in life was to tell everybody, go follow Jesus, this is the one that we're waiting for. But when Jesus didn't do the things that he expected him to do, it caused him to doubt what he knew he knew. Now, we all have expectations about a relationship, especially with certain people. And some of those expectations we know we have, and some of those expectations we don't even realize that we have. Now, for the expectations that we know, we have to communicate. It's our responsibility to tell our partner, hey, this is what I want. How can we expect them to do something that we expect or that we want if we don't communicate those needs to them? So if we don't tell them, that's our fault. Even if we have to tell them every day for years, that's still our fault. So for those expectations that we're aware of, the job is on ourselves to communicate that. Otherwise, those expectations will absolutely be missed. Now, for those expectations that we have that we don't even realize we have, they will be missed. And so the sign that you're watching for that that's what happened is when you start to doubt what you know you know. You thought you knew that you were destined to be with this person forever, that you were meant for each other, that you love them and nothing could ever come in between that. And when you start to doubt that, you have to ask the question, did an expectation that I had, did that just get missed? Because when you start to doubt what you know, 9 times out of 10, it's because you had an expectation that something would happen and it didn't happen. So you got to have the fight, finish the fight, take corrective action and course correct. Communicate, hey, I didn't realize it, but this is what I expected and that didn't happen. So when you know your expectations, you have to communicate them. And when expectations get missed, just recognize that that symptom that will come up is doubt and that it can be fixed through communication. Which brings us to number 6, which is over communicate. There's an old saying, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. With communication, it's over communication equals communication and communication equals miscommunication. When my wife and I first got married, we bought a car and it had a membership to a car wash, and that membership had like 1 week left on it. So I wanted to go get a free car wash. So we pulled into the car wash and I noticed there was nobody there, nobody in line, nobody vacuuming out their cars. Literally, it was running, it was working, but nobody was there at the car wash. And I said out loud, man, that is weird. I wonder why there's nobody at the car wash. About 2 seconds, 3 seconds went by. My wife was looking out the window and she said to me, it's cloudy out today. And so my thought was, clearly she wasn't listening to what I just said, because that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So she must just be making a comment about she's noticing that there's clouds in the sky. And I thought, that's kind of odd. Why would you point that out? Now, you probably are aware of what she was trying to point out, but I wasn't. So we went through the car wash, got the car all clean, and later that night it started to rain. I said to her, I cannot believe this. What are the odds that it hasn't rained in months, and on the one day that we go get this free car wash, it happens to rain? And she looks at me and she says, I told you it was gonna rain. And I was shocked. I said, you absolutely did not tell me it was gonna rain, because if you did tell me it was gonna rain, I wouldn't have done the car wash today. I'd remember that. And she said, no, as we were pulling into the car wash, I told you that it was probably gonna rain. I said, still, you didn't, because I remember everything that we said as we were pulling into the car wash. And then she said, no, remember, you said, I wonder why nobody's here. And I said, look, there's clouds in the sky. That probably is because it's gonna rain. And so she was subtly implying, looking at the sky and the clouds, and she just assumed that by pointing out the clouds that I would draw the connection between nobody in the car wash and the clouds in the sky means, hey, it's probably gonna rain, and that's why people aren't getting their car washed. And so she communicated to me, which resulted in a miscommunication. And obviously there was no fight about this. It wasn't a frustrating, this is just a silly example, but we have since learned to over communicate with each other, and that results in regular communication. And regarding communication, one of the absolute no-nos that we absolutely never do is we do not email and we do not text with one another. another. Because 90% of communication is nonverbal, meaning what kind of space do I leave in between the words? Where am I putting the emphasis on the words? What facial expressions do I have when I'm saying something? All of that is communication. And none of that comes through over a text or over an email. And so all of the couples, all the relationships that I've known, whenever they're having a fight, whenever they have struggles with their relationships, 9 times out of 10, they're talking about texts that they've had with each other. And look what this person said, look what they said. It is the easiest way to get into an unnecessary fight when you communicate over text, because 90% of the communication doesn't come through. And so it's very easy to miscommunicate and misread somebody's intentions. Number 7 is be adaptable and find somebody who is adaptable, easily able to endure hard times. My wife grew up in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Uzbekistan, and her family got kicked out of all 3 of those countries. There is nothing that I ever put her through that seemed difficult for her. When we first got married and we were living on $2,000 a month getting out of debt, and we were living in the worst part of town, we were paying $650 a month for our apartment in an area of town that had extremely high crime with terrible neighbors. She made it enjoyable. And then later, when she quit her job so that she could stay home with our newborn son, and we had to go down to my income in my new career, and we had to again live on like $2,000 a month, she had helped us build the discipline to make it work. She wasn't going out there racking up bills on the credit cards, needing to buy fancier designer stuff. She was clipping coupons and shopping the sales and making it work. And then later, when I ended up quitting my job and we had absolutely no income to live off of until the business started producing income for us, we already by then had the practice of being able to live through those hard, difficult times, and she had the faith in me to be able to endure until we were able to make it work. And she never doubted me for 1 second, even though I had plenty of doubts myself. And I know quite a few men who have the skills and the motivation and the discipline that would be necessary, that they would be able to quit their job and start a successful business. And they have the desire. They don't want to be at their job anymore, but their wives would never let them do it. Their wives are too scared, or their wives want to continue to spend as much money as they're spending right now, don't want to have to go through that hard time, or don't have the faith in their husband. And so I'm extremely grateful, and like I said earlier, wouldn't be where I am today without her. Number 8, this is probably going to piss some people off, but always prioritize your marriage over your kids. Now, some people have terrible relationships, and so they just default to saying, hey, I'm going to prioritize my kids over my spouse. But really, that's just a cop-out because they don't want to put in the work to fix their marriage. And so they're just saying they're prioritizing their kids when they're really not. Because in reality, when you try and prioritize your kids and your relationship with your kids over your relationship with your spouse, what you end up doing is neglecting your relationship with your spouse. That relationship falls apart, and you end up making a hostile environment for the kids to grow up in. And that is not putting your kids first. In reality, if you do prioritize your relationship with your spouse first over your kids, then you end up having a great relationship and you create an environment for them that actually does prioritize them. All people, and especially kids, learn through mirror neurons. That's how we are trained and wired to learn. We watch somebody do something and then copy them. And that's especially true for kids. And so they're going to learn how to act and how to live through modeling, through mirroring you and watching what you model to them. So if you want them to have a successful life, model a successful life to them. And the reality is your kids will be living with you for 18 years, maybe 20 years. You're going to be living with your spouse until the grave. And so by putting your husband or your wife first, you will build a successful relationship and life together, and that will model to your kids what they need for their own successful life, and it will prioritize giving them what they need as well. And number 9, never leave. If you do have an exit, if you do have a way out, in the back of your mind, you'll always be thinking, I could just leave. You will never be committed enough to make it work, especially through the hard times, and you'll never have what it takes then to intentionally choose the hard times in order to have those massive leveraged gains in the future of having that big success from intentionally choosing the hard things now. You won't have that solid foundation, that trust with one another that no matter what, we're sticking by each other's side and we're going to make it through this. So you can never allow yourself to think that if things get hard enough, then I can just leave. And you always want to make sure you find somebody who you are confident they would never leave you either. Obviously, you cannot control what another person does, but a good heuristic for this is the joint checking account test. If you don't trust the other person enough to have a joint checking account with them, then you probably don't trust them enough to get married. If you really want long-term success financially and with your relationship, you got to trust this person implicitly. You're trying to build something that will last for decades. And if you can't share an account with them, either they're the wrong person or you've built an unsteady foundation and you need to do the work of rebuilding that foundation. And the reality is, if one of you does leave the other one, that does result in losing half of everything you've ever built. Not to mention the legal fees. And if you have kids, the stress and the strain that will cause on you. And so without a doubt, having that commitment to stay together forever is going to be a massive leg up on most Americans who end up getting divorced and lose half of the financial progress and destroy the most of the satisfaction that they have in their lives. Obviously, a lot of these things are difficult. They are countercultural. Many people just always want to choose the easy way out, but nothing in life that's worth doing is going to be easy. And I was extremely lucky in finding my wife and stumbling on a lot of these lessons that we were able to put to use first without having to learn them the hard way. They've been helpful to us, and I hope that they will be helpful to you as well. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.